Today we are back with Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous Companion Guides for Unfair Difficulty, and today we are going to do Animal Companions. If you are new to the series and don't know how we do our builds, they are all made for Unfair Difficulty and none of them exploit bugs, so they should all remain viable despite any bug fixes or patches made to the game. It's also worth mentioning that all my builds are tested from early to late levels. They are not made just for the sake of YouTube videos. I do them firstly for my own unfair playthroughs, and it's very important to me that they are actually effective at every level in the game, so I can actually get through with my playthroughs and not just remain the helm of theory crafting. Because this is a turn-based system, but the game is real time with pause, sometimes builds don't go as I'd expect them, and that's why I think the testing is important, so I can both bring you the best builds and actually be able to beat the game on unfair difficulty, which is my main goal. With all that out of the way, let's get to our builds. For this video, I'm going to cover just two animal companions, the Leopard and the Boar. The main reason for that is because most other animal companions can be built similarly to one of those two. The main difference here is that the Leopard starts with a higher dexterity, while the Boar starts with a very low dexterity, below 13, so he can't get the dodge feat at level 1. And has to build some ability scores before we start going into certain feat lines. If you have something different from Leopard or Boar, just take a look at your animal companion stats to see if it has a dexterity of 13 or higher. If it has a higher than 13, then you can go with the Leopard build. If it has a lower, you can go with the Boar build. The builds I'm going to do here are very generic. They are not meant to be mounted or damage dealers or fill any specific role. They are just meant to be tanks from mostly early to mid game. They do fall off in the late game because they can't get mythic abilities like Last Stand, and some bosses can get through the ERC, even though they can get to high numbers around the 80s. Leopard early on is an absolute beast of a tank. He can save you so many reloads just by having an animal companion, someone to cast protective luck on him, and just look how well he can tank even against the water elemental. The water elemental here has a less than 1% chance of hitting us because of the protective luck on top of the blur, which we can get from a potion here on Shield Maze or from scrolls we can buy at the Mongrel encampment. And yeah, we can sit here for a lot of turns while our party actually deals damage to the water elemental. And yeah, Leopard, just a great tank early on, very solid. I highly recommend every unfair build to have one on the early game at least. For the Leopard, because we have a high dexterity, we can take dodge at level 1. Dodge needs a 13 dexterity, so with some animal companions we are not able to take dodge at level 1, but here we are. Then we take weapon finesse at level 3. This way we have a better chance of landing some hits on early game enemies, and even though Leopard's damage is very low at this stage, it's still useful to have him do some damage at low levels. Then at level 4, it's very important you take a point into intelligence, so we are able to get improved unarmed strike, followed by crane style and crane wing. This is a very big boost to our AC, since we are fighting defensively all the time to get the bonus to AC. And yeah, all we need to do is tank really. We don't need to do damage with animal companions. Then we want to start taking some teamwork feats. We start with outflank. We don't make much use of outflank. We are not hitting that often and not doing that much damage. But outflank does give a bonus to attack to our main damage dealers. Then we go to back for extra AC. And shake it off for better saving throws. Later we take improved initiative to be flat-footed less often, and deflect arrows as our last feat. I do think this is the least useful, that's why I leave it for last, even though it's a decent defensive too. For our subclass I took just the regular animal companion. For Leopard I don't think there's much point into taking anything else unless you are doing a more attack focused build, which you can do, but on unfair difficulty I'd only recommend that if you took Leopard in a class like Sacred Huntsmaster, which shares its teamwork feats with the animal companion. This way you open up a lot of feats to take things like dazzling display and shatter defenses, maybe even some more combat utility feats, and the animal companion can actually do decent damage late game if that's the route you choose to go. Now for Boar it's very similar, but because we don't have a high enough dex, we start with just a 12, we can take dodge at level 1. So we start with improved initiative, then we go into weapon focus gore. Weapon focus is a little bit better for Boar because it has only one type of attack, which is gore. Leopard has two different types, in bite and claw. So the weapon focus is less effective because it won't affect all his attacks. Then we go into level 4 and take 1 point into intelligence, just like the Leopard. This way we can take improved unarmed strike. And here at level 6 or 7 even, you should already have access to belts of dexterity, which you are going to need for your 7th level up, so you are able to take dodge. At level 8 we take a point into dexterity, and every other level we are actually going to take points into dexterity, except 20. We take the 20 ability score into constitution, but we want AC as high as possible, that's why we go for dexterity and not strength. So after dodge we are able to go into the crane style feat line, so crane style, crane wing, and the same teamwork feats, outflank, back to back, and shake it off. Here, instead of deflect arrows, I took armor proficiency heavy. You don't really need to do that, but it does allow you to have a higher AC and to have someone mount the Boar instead of having him polymorph to increase his AC. It's a nice option if you do want to have someone mounted on your Boar. And the subclass I chose Bulwark because of the armor proficiencies that can later go into heavy armor proficiency when we take the feat. Just like the Leopard, if you have a class that shares its teamwork feats with the animal companion, you can choose some more offensive oriented feats, since you don't need to take the teamwork feats any longer. For equipment, there are a lot of nice options for animal companions. In head slot we have a few things that give bonuses to AC, this one gives morale, there are others that give insight as well. For cape you just want some regular resistance. In bracers, just a bracers of armor. And for belt, in Leopard, I like to give him a belt of dexterity. This increases both his attack, damage and AC. For the necklace, you can just use a regular plus natural armor bonus to AC, but if you have someone that can cast Barkskin, there are some other defensive utility options available in the game, or you can also just use an amulet of Agile or Mighty Fists, depending on whether your animal companion is dexterity or strength based to attack. We also have some pads, I think they are called, which give bonuses to your attacks. For the builds I'm showcasing here, they are not very relevant. As I said, the builds here are mostly for tanking and not for damage. On the Boar, I have a few different options. In the head slot, I have one that gives insight. As I mentioned, there are some of those. In the necklace, I have half of a pair, which can be very good if you have someone else wearing the other half. It's a circumstance bonus, not easy to come by. Bracers of armor is the same, cape is the same, and the belt here is lizard tail. This is very nice for animal companions, because to increase their AC, you do want to cast polymorph into either fire or air elemental. And the lizard tail gives a +3 morale bonus to AC when the user is polymorphed. So this is a good option, even though it's a slot where you could equip a belt of dexterity. You can also cast Cat's Grace on your animal companion, which makes up for the loss of the dexterity belt. And as you can see, none of them are wearing armor. That's because on this type of build, you just want them to tank, and the best way to do it is by casting polymorph into either fire or air elemental, in which case, when polymorphed, you don't get any bonuses from armor, so there's no point in using armor. I don't think there's any point in showing late game combat. It's the same as early game. Those builds are just pure tanks, they don't do anything else. But I'm just going to give you a look at our AC when we are polymorphed into fire elementals and using all of our buffs. Here, as you can see, it's a 76 and we only have one morale bonus. It can go up to 3 because of our helmet, so it can easily go up to 78 here. When fighting defensively, it can get over the 80s very easily. So we have as bonus Shield of Faith, Magical Vestments Armor, and Barkskin. We also have the +4 natural armor bonus from polymorph into large fire elemental, and an extra dexterity bonus from the polymorph. It's a +4 polymorph bonus because of the large fire elemental polymorph. So that all that adds up to a total of 76 on the Leopard. Now let's see the Boar. With the Boar we have pretty much the same buffs. We have +5 deflection from Shield of Faith, +5 natural armor from Barkskin, and +5 armor enhancement from Magical Vestments Armor, as well as the +4 natural armor bonus from polymorph into large fire elemental. We also have the same +4 to dexterity from large fire elemental polymorph, and all of that adds up to a total of 77. Here it's worth noting we triggered the +3 morale bonus to AC from our belt. We also could have cast Cat's Grace to give a further +2 to AC from the enhancement to dexterity, so the Boar with this build can go to a total of 79, and once in combat, triggering fighting defensively, Crane Wing, it can go to about the 80s, just like the Leopard. So more than enough for you to tank against regular mobs on unfair difficulty. There are very few enemies that can get through this AC, and that's why animal companions make such good tanks. They have a very high AC from the start, and even late game they can still hold up. Even if you do not go with the option to polymorph and all that and use them just as mounts, they are still very solid and have a very decent AC. And that will be it for our animal companions builds. As I said before, they are very generic, can fit any party and do well from early to late game. Though late game, because they don't have last stand and other ways of survivability, they can die very easily to spells. Just be careful with that, but when it comes to AC, they do have a high enough AC to handle most non-boss units. I'd like to know in the comments if you do build your animal companions in a different way, maybe to fill different roles as maybe damage dealers even. If you do, let me know in the comments, and until the next video, I hope you have a good time.